The laptop ready for Steve to plug and play.
Yeah.
I love that. Like
Yeah.
I'll be like,
That's so annoying. Oh, there we go. That's in the middle.
you know, my sister would set up the TV out in the lobby and have it out there playing.
A watch party. Even though they could literally commit like
I they're putting the computer on the balcony outside of the
yeah.
So before the meeting's on,
It's gonna be a fun. Oh yeah. The meeting will be starting.
It's here recording this. It's like I don't know it's recording right now. So when it's uploaded to YouTube, it has this.
Yeah, we're live.
What this?
Just have a picture.
Literally, the picture is really yesterday.
I'm gonna look back on this one day and be like, wow, this is.
I'm looking back at the house. Go back there. Anyway, I was looking at lighting. It looks like 45 minutes. Welcome to the SGA meeting. Do we have to link for this? Yep, go to YouTube. No, we don't have to. Did I email it to you?
I emailed it.
Probably in text. What do you think that would have been for SGA? Wow, I love my window service. Nope. I didn't. I know, but just a
Oh yeah. What sports trivia? Yeah. No. I don't know, maybe. Yeah, we're Adam's got a concern.
Oh, yeah.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. We'll get it. Laura, do you know if we have extra? No, because I was going to want to Steve. Well, you can call. Okay. Can you go get one? Yeah. Go ahead, one. Go all the way to the right. Just say your name tag over to that between Sarah and Ethan. Yeah.
I call to order the January 31st meeting of the Student Government Association. Please review your agendas. We'll have them
Michaela Evans. Kate Levin. Levi Ekstrom. Caitlin Egan. Nicholas Smith. Timothy Allen. Isabella Correa. Haley Kane. Maggie Roberts. Constantine Sotelo. Christopher Lannon. Eric Hardy. Ethan Haynes. Lois Black. Alexandria Amelia. Daniel Ryan. Lucas Appella. Josh Stone. Nick Colombo. Sarah Harrington. Jack Linden. Joseph Tania. Angela Hayes. Justin Wall.
Are there any corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, the minutes are approved. Now, if your friends report, Aaron Austin.
Hello, everyone. Tonight, our guest speakers are Vice President of Administration and Finance, Steve Capsar. I'm not sure if Phil's here, but Director of Dining Services, Connor, and then Director of Residential Life, John Zacco, to discuss fees for the academic year. Please try to refrain from asking questions specifically related to dining or res life. I'm planning on asking them to come down individually at another time. And Adam is also doing a food services report. So you can bring up anything for dining then. Yeah, so please welcome up Steve.
Thank you for inviting me back here today. This is really part two of our fee presentation exercise. For those of you that were here last December, we kind of presented some background information on what was happening at that point in time and how the university was estimating our projected costs and our budgets for next year. So today is kind of part two of that. We've done a fair amount of analysis based on what we know today. We're going to need to make some assumptions about next year, about 8 or 9 months ahead of time. And as we work our way through this semester, we'll be updating those as we move along. So today is designed to really recap at a high level, kind of the key points from last time, and to really talk through a little bit about the recommendations that you're going to see today on the please going forward. So this is just a brief outline. I think I talked a little bit about this. There's a new CPI calculation from the Department of Labor, the tuition fee recap, mandatory fees, and then residence life and dining will also do a brief update on their part as well. Then we can open it up for questions and answers as long as you chat. CPI, this is the same graph you saw last time, except it's updated with December data. And not much has changed in terms of the mix, but the CPI year-over-year calculation has gone down a little bit. It's now running at about 6.5%. That would be the red bar, the all items bar on the left side. You can see that food is still running at 10%, pretty high year-over-year. So food prices, if you've been grocery shopping lately, is quite expensive. I have to cut back on my egg eating right now. They're like $6 a dozen, I think, the last time I checked. Very expensive. Energy is also up there. It's clicking in at about a little under 8%. The university is not immune from these increases, which I'll talk through it a little bit in the presentation. And so CPI is still running at historically high levels, and we're going to do the best we can to minimize those increases, but we can't really ignore them. I was asked to also talk about the general fund is kind of the main fund we use to fund operations of the university. It includes all the expenses to run the university except for the CGCE operation, which is kind of a part-time grad operation. It also excludes dining and residence life. So everything else gets thrown into this particular bucket. And so we did the same exercise that you've seen with dining and res life in terms of splitting out how a dollar is spent at the university. So if you look at the chart, we spend most of our money on people. compensation and the benefits that are associated with paying full-time people their benefits, plus payroll taxes and other related costs. So that's 61% or 61 cents on every dollar in the general fund gets spent on compensation and benefits. Department operations is a hodgepodge of all of the non-personnel costs that roll up into support all the departments on campus, whether you're an academic department or an operational department. So all of our contracts, supplies, equipment, temporary help, copying, postage, software, equipment, all that stuff falls into department operations. And you can see that that's running at about 20 cents on the dollar. And the other one is scholarships. Those are institutional scholarships. So we spend about 7 cents on the dollar of the university's budget for scholarships. That excludes all the state scholarship activity and the grants that come in directly to either the university or directly to you. So those are the top three. And then you can see it kind of dwindles from there. We spend money on capital projects, utilities, and a variety of other things. All in the university budget overall, when you put everything together, is a little over $100 million. So you can see how that kind of plays out. So the top three expenses comprise about 87 cents on the dollar. So those three things are the main spending categories at the university. This is a chart you've seen before. It obviously hasn't changed because no decisions have been made going forward. Just a slight recap on this. The tuition and fees for this year for a full-time undergraduate day student is $11,500 for the year. You can see how closely all the other schools are aligned to the same rate. I mean, it's really pretty close up or down, except for, say, UMass. And we have two specialty schools, Mass Maritime and Mass College of Art. So they have different pricing structures because they have different funding mechanisms. So they're a little bit different. But all in all, we're really pretty close with all the other schools. We try to stay in the middle of the pack. We don't want to be the highest and we don't want to be the lowest. We try to stay in that middle band. We think that's where it makes the most sense for the university. I fully expect the other universities are going to increase their fees at similar rates. We don't compare rates. You could be accused of collusion if you do that. So we don't really talk about what you're doing. When it gets decided, it gets decided. And that's kind of how it goes. Each campus decides their own rates. One of the major increases that we're seeing year over year, we do a lot of modeling and we try to collect as much information as we can. And these are the three top issues or three top areas that we're seeing significant changes in our budget that's requiring us to really increase our fees. Compensation and benefits are going up about $1 million. The source of this are two things. The state typically pays us a lump sum to support the collective bargaining agreements that the state negotiates on behalf of all the state universities. But there are pieces of that the state does not pay for. So, for example, I'm not in a union as an administrator, so the state doesn't pay my increases. The university has to fund them. There are several people that are non-union positions. The university has to fund all those positions outright. There are also major elements of the collective bargaining agreements that are not funded by the state. That's included in that $1 million. And then we fully expect the benefit rate, which I talked about, I think, last time, it's the rate that the state charges us for employees not on the state payroll. And that's a significant increase in that area too. So all in, we estimate if we do nothing different, keep the same people employed that are employed now, we believe we're going to see an increase of $1 million in our compensation budget. The next one is the debt service increase. I don't know if you know all the details or not, but our residential life program has fairly lower than typical occupancy rates. They're not full. We have an empty dorm right now, Dickinson Hall. We closed it. Whether you operate a dorm or not, the university has taken out debt service to construct our most recent dorms. The University Hall and New Hall have significant debt associated with those. The university also carries debt associated with all the other residence halls to make improvements related to deferred maintenance. So all this gets kind of factored in through the organization that owns those facilities, the MSCBA. And right now, we're projecting, based on their analysis to us, an increase of about almost $2 million in our annual debt service is going to go up starting in FY24. So that's a longer discussion about how debt is calculated and how it impacts the campus, but nonetheless, it's going to go up a significant amount next year. You may not know that the university is also funding currently the funding losses in residence life because our occupancy is lower than average. So we're funding not only the additional debt service, but about a $2 million loss annually. So overall, we have a $4 million gap we're dealing with in the residence life budget. The university has to step up and make that whole. We're required to not let that budget fall into a negative territory. So however we have to do it, we have to fund it, or there are consequences the state will follow through on. Lastly, let me just say utilities are just kind of skyrocketing. That increase of $600,000 is a 20% increase on our utility costs. We work with the Westfield Gas and Electric folks, and they buy their fuel far in advance in the futures market. They already know what that fuel is going to cost, and they're passing, of course, that cost on to all their customers. So we've met with them several times. We've been able to reduce some of the cost here and there, but that's an estimate they're giving us, and that's what we believe is going to happen next year. All in, if you look at the total, the major drivers that are causing these cost increases total to about $3.5 million next year, so not insignificant. You've seen this before too. I think I showed this last time. It's just a recap of the average tuition and fee history at Westfield State in terms of full-time undergraduate rates. This does not include residential or dining costs, simply fees and tuition. And you can see it's kind of all over the map. Although on average, it's about 3.5% over the last 5 years. We're going to be in that same neighborhood when you see the grid that I'll show you, about 3.5%. So this is what we're recommending for FY24. As I mentioned before, that the CPI on food costs is 10%, but I need to raise the dining fees about 5%, and we'll figure out how to cover the rest of it. Residence life fees are going up 3% on average. The general fee would go up 4%, and when you put it all together for a residential student all in, it'd be about a 3.5% increase. So while inflation is about double that, we are seeing some cost pressures that are, in our view, unavoidable to operate the campus. If you spin this out and look at kind of how the components look, this is a summary of all the components that are what we call mandatory fees. Mandatory fees are fees we charge to all students. Obviously, if you're not living in a residence hall, we're not going to charge you for living in a residence hall. But you can see how all the fees play out. The tuition is set by the state, and there are politics behind that number, that $970. So it hasn't changed in years for a variety of reasons. The mandatory fees, you can see how those changed. I think you increased your student activity fee last year. There's been no request to change it this year. The general fee is the fee that supports the entire university. That's 80% of all of our costs, and the general fee pays my salary, administrator's salary, the cost to operate the campus, utilities, etc. Capital improvement fee helps to cover the cost of capital improvements on campus. That's not changing. And the technology fee, we readjusted a few years ago and actually reduced it to equal what we were spending. That's not really changing next year for right now. So when you look at this all in, the mandatory fees would go up about 3.3% for tuition and fees. We use a weighted average on the room rates and meal rates because we have so many different rate structures. Based on which plan you're participating in or where you live, you would have a different rate. So we use a kind of a weighted average rate. But you can see the increases that we're recommending are 3 and 5% for residential rates and the meal plan rates. And so all in, when you look at the bottom line, it is going to be about, we're going to recommend about an $868 increase, which is about a 3.5% increase all in for full-time day residential students. If you're a commuter student, obviously you won't pay for the meal plan or the residence life rates. You'll be at about 3.6% on the mandatory fees. So that's where we see things heading. This is consistent with what the board agreed to have us consider in October. We presented a set of parameters to the board. The board approved a set of planning parameters that we tried to adhere to. Their planning parameters had us clicking in between 3 and 4.5%. So we're less than what the board had approved in terms of planning guidelines, probably still higher than what you'd want to see. There is a new campus fee going forward, a $200 course fee. Bill can probably talk more about that, but there's a special fee if you sign up for a certain course on wine appreciation, brewing industry and beer, and mixology courses. So there are supplies obviously associated with that endeavor. I think Bill Conner, the director of dining, could comment more on that. So that's the high level broad brush overview at this point. I'm going to turn it over to John Zacco, who will run through residence life for a couple minutes. And I think there are some comparisons that you'd asked us to prepare. So Res Life has them, dining has them. And as soon as we get through those, we'll stop, pause, and take all your questions. So, John.
Everyone, thank you for having us. So just want to go over some review and updates from before. So this is similar to what we had last semester with a special overview and the expense per cost per dollar. This is updated with our expected expenses for next year. As you can see, the debt service is the highest expense we have right now. That actually went up a little bit compared to last time. The breakdown in percentages is very similar to where it has been before. Where the debt service is the most, our people, our staff for both Res Life and facilities. Those are a couple of highest expenses, and then the utilities, which is significant, that's going to be increasing as well. The other expenses that you can see on there are a fraction of what we have for expenses in terms of training, other supports we do for the department, other contracts, program maintenance. Our main expenses right now are it's debt service and our personnel to run the halls. This is a comparison for the rent across the campuses. This is what was proposed at the latest SCVBA board meeting. Some of these may change between the campuses. I will put a caveat out there. We have a flat rate at Westfield State with our singles and doubles across campus. A lot of campuses don't have that. So when trying to get a comparison, there's really no easy way to show what is like a new hall type of apartment suite style compared to one of those at Bridgewater State. This is a rough estimate of the cost of what a suite apartment single would be or a suite or apartment double would be. Campuses do have the ability to do a buyouts as well. I didn't really include that into there because it makes the math a little bit harder. This kind of gives a general sense. Up top is what our current rate is we're proposing for next year, and then the rest of the ones are showing the average out there. So really, when you see this in comparison, there's some areas where we may be a little bit higher. A lot of that's going to be depending on where the campus will be. But as far as most schools out there as well, we're actually probably pretty low compared to other schools out there. SL State and Mass College out there. Just to kind of do a breakdown of what our rates are going to look like, we're proposing for next year. We're looking to have a semester rate of $4,275. That would basically be an academic year rate of $8,550. We are still looking to do the standard rates across campus for the singles and doubles, suite styles, and traditional halls. That's something that's been working this year, and we feel it's actually a benefit overall. Students are staying here for from the 4 years. We are looking at, as we're able to have the premium singles when we can. Those will still continue to have the same $1,000 increase per space. So to $4,275, looking at $5,275 per semester. There was a recommendation from the MSCBA to potentially have a differentiation between doubles and single rooms in our suites and apartment styles. We opted not to do that increase because it is something that we feel that the single rate is a benefit, so we decided to keep it standard across the board. So I'm going to now turn over to Phil to talk about dining.
Not a lot has changed for us. John talked about his dollar value. Here is ours. This is the exact same slide as what I presented last year. We have a small change in our debt. As you all are aware, we took on some additional debt service to repair some equipment, put in the new dishwasher and some of those other pieces. Our debt service went up about $150,000 a year to cover that additional that loan, and we actually have taken that from the MSCBA since it is a student-supported venture. That's a new opportunity for us. One of the amazing things is that the interest rate was practically free. It is a very low rate interest. We kind of took the money, I think, at the worst of the COVID experience when the feds weren't raising interest rates and they were dropping it to stimulate the economy. So we took the opportunity to borrow at the best possible time to do some improvements to dining. And hopefully you've seen the brand new carousel and how pretty she is and all of the amazing things that it does, and it makes the dining experience better for everyone. Our comparison is here. We don't want to have the worst price because that means we're only serving frozen food, but we don't want to have the most expensive price because we want to stay comparative amongst our peers. So just like housing, it's very difficult to compare rates. We have compared our unlimited or the Nestor's plan to the 15-week plan. More colleges and universities have shifted into that 15-week plan as their common. One of the interesting things to note here is that we've had to create somewhat of a universal price. So your meal plan has the value of your meal swipes and the value of your dining dollars or the value-added funds that are given to you for your plan. One of the things we do is every university who has a 15-week plan will tie on a different dollar value for dining dollars, which makes them really hard to compare. So when you look at these numbers are going to represent the cost of the plan minus the dining dollar function. It's really hard to compare us when our dining dollar plan has, $300, another school may give $500 and their plan is $200 more than ours. So I want you to know that we've normalized the pricing by taking out the dining dollar component to put us there. For our unlimited plan, we're in the bottom half, which is good. We're about $2,112 when you adjust for taking off the dining dollars. We're well over $100 below Framingham, but we're also above Salem. And then when you look at the 15 per week plan, we are essentially smack dab right in the middle. As you all remember, about 7 years ago, we've decided to transition to be self-operated, which means the university runs the dining program. One of the things you need to understand is that besides UMass, every one of our peers here is run by a third-party contractor like an Aramark, a Sodexo, or a Chartwell's, and that changes their structure immensely. Most of our peers are not able to apply the same level of dining dollar spend to the food as we are because we don't pay an outside contractor and overhead to manage our dining program. We're actually able to contribute more to the quality of the food than some of our peers because we've taken out that middleman and essentially streamlined our operations. And then the last piece for us is that, we had a 4.5% to a 5.5% increase, and we've settled on a 5%. And Steve touched on this just real briefly about the consumer price index being over 10% for food. So we're meeting in the middle again. Students have been asked to give 5% towards the cost of their meal plan, and we're going to continue to drive down values and drive down bargains. We've partnered with a new food vendor that actually has allowed us to get some additional rebates back on the cost of food, which has contributed exactly to where you're going. In the next year, we should see about $40,000 back in food rebates that'll essentially allow us to continue to make up the difference between the 5% that you would pay and the 10% that we have overall for dining to continue to operate food. It's a volatile market, and we're still not sure, where we're going to end up. We're hopeful that the consumer price index does come down in terms of the cost of food, but as you've been home at the holidays or if you go grocery shopping, eggs are still $5 a dozen or more, depending on where you shop. And 2 years ago, they were 99 cents a dozen. So that's just one of those quality factors that you have to understand. And I will tell you now, you eat lots of eggs. Next to dairy, it's probably one of our higher categories of spend. And those are some of the things that we have challenges with exploring. So we're not taking eggs away anytime soon. We just have to find the best way to deliver them to you at the best possible price. I'll turn it back to Steve and John and see if you have any questions that we can answer for you.
Are there any comments, questions, concerns? Emily Fluid?
Yeah, I don't know who it is. I was just wondering, you can kind of some context in years past, much bigger increase than past.
Yeah, there's a chart up there that shows you what the average increase has happened over the last 5 years. 2019 it was 7%. In 2022 it was 0. So we average it all out, so it depends on the year and how what's going on. At least on the generous view.
Any further? Levi Extra?
I'm just curious, the $1 amount for everything, like it's like $1 spent. How much money is that 60 cents? Right. Everyone uses that $1. I'm just curious.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I don't have those numbers in front of me. I was answering correctly dollars in the sense equivalent to dollars. What I will tell you is the overall campus budget is about $1 million. Roughly, we spend about $50 million on compensation and benefits. We spend about $4 million to run the program. About $10 million in dining bill, $10 million in dining, $12 million to run the CPC program. But I got to go back to the exact dollar. I'm trying to do this on days that still way based on the request to do this. We have all the information that happens in the
And simplifying it down to the dollar gives it a perspective, for a lot more people to understand. I'll get a grocery bill from one vendor for $18,000. For a lot of folks, that's an incomparable. You really can't comprehend the amount of money that is when it goes into something. So breaking it down to the dollar level for dining, you multiply it by 10, and that would give you an idea of what our budget is. But we simplify it down so that you know where every penny that you are spending as a student for a meal plan goes. So there's 100% transparency in operation.
Regarding the FY24 major project increases, I know increases. I was just wondering, we talked about people come out of campus. I was wondering if we talked with the state about possibly assisting with other areas and which could be like services, because I know that's a huge thing for athletics. I was just wondering if we have this conversation.
I'm not directly involved in this, so somebody else can comment on really like that. But I think, as I understand the conversations, nothing is decided on what to do. There would be a per person per rate cost for the hours people on campus for facilities we're not using. Those dollars would certainly go to offset some of those cost increases, I would imagine. But it is like a fairly significant, about $4 million loss. And so until there's some closure on what the state is willing to do, I don't think they're going to give us a right check. But I'm not exactly in the know right now.
Hi everyone. I would agree with Steve. I think right now we're not really certain where we are in that process. Obviously, obviously, we would welcome, right? Anything that help us, on campus in any way, shape, or form. So, I do know that we're also thinking about conferences in the summer, which could also help with some of that as well.
Yeah, we actually start the consultant process at the end of February. And many people in the back are included in that process to explore summer conferences as an opportunity for us to bring in additional revenue that can be given to the university to reduce the need for some of these operating increases year over year. We had an initial year last year and we were able to show some favorable numbers. So being able to grow and develop that program, the goal is to use all of campus facilities year round to reduce the cost of students. We will explore that in the month of February and talk about a business plan of how to grow that to hopefully make it to a point where it can contribute back and hopefully reduce the overall costs.
Yeah, we will, because the last 5-year projection data just we received for this line, the losses aren't going away. This is a structural issue, not a 1 year issue. So it's not going to be go away. So we have to think more creatively about how to either repurpose our facilities currently or come up with other strategies to reduce costs. So there's a lot of work we have to really do for the long term. So if we were able to get some support from the state, what was asked, it's not going to really solve the matter.
Chris?
Hi, I have two things for Steve or John. You can either of you can answer it. Is Dickinson being offline? How much debt is that causing the university, like monthly or by semester? Also, can you clarify a little bit more how much the price of a premium single is going up in a traditional compound?
I can answer the second question first. So basically, the premium single is not really going. It's going to be 4,035 or 8,005 would be what the next year. This year is 8,800 is what the rate for this year. The premium single aren't changing. The models are changing. It's going to be about 1,000 more than the same last year. This year is 4,150 for a semester. Premium single is 550. So that increase is the same. So basically, it's going to be $1,000 and having like the cost of next year. So I mean, that's a little more. As far as the first question, I don't know the exact numbers because I'm going to know when you have doing that close, it's over close, so I think that's our that's only over the open, but there is savings that we do save in terms of academic savings in utilities, like building there, water, there are savings in that one. But the building is truly not used. Not because if we were to add one there, we're not saying nothing on campus, we're going to do that, but we're not shipping more. We're not fully flush it out there, but there is savings.
We don't have the program, in front of me to answer the questions. But I can tell you that we're projecting debt service and payment agreements to be in 2024. $12.4 million. Sorry. The way this works, I don't know the way this works is the MSD has two forms of debt. One is liability, and years ago, we didn't issue debt liability, we issued debt in the collective of all the campuses. So there's a per not building charge for account which reports to all the buildings. And there are a couple of buildings that the last 20 years they issued debt specifically for those buildings. So there's a lot more detail behind that, but it's really interesting.
Any further? Daniel Courier?
Hello, everybody. Steve, I have a quick question on this appropriation. So it hasn't been set yet. The governor hasn't released the budget yet. But of course, question one passed in November, it's actually getting more money for public highway. So they didn't give any numbers on how much is the appropriation.
I'm trying to up the fair share.
Yeah.
Does everybody know what the fair share premium is? Final one, and law was passed by the voters of Massachusetts. We fund a special tax on people who make $1 million or more. And that tax is going to generate anywhere between $1 and $1.5 billion a year. The focus of the use of that money is designed for two purposes. One is to support state transportation needs, the SGA or the EPA, and then public higher education. And so, to answer your question, there's a lot of conversation right now. There's a lot of conversation about how much money is coming in, where it's coming in, and how the pot gets divided between transportation and higher education. And the subset to that is how does the higher education pot get developed between UMass, state universities, and community colleges. So there's no clarity on that right now. Speculation is that we're not going to see anything this year, even though the money will be generated. They're talking about how the money gets segregated out from the state budget so we can track it and see how it's allocated. And the Board of Higher Education is putting forward strategies and recommendations that align to increasing financial aid for students and giving state institutions a way of generating money for innovation and support operations. So how all that is going to shake out, I have no idea. You probably won't hear anything, I'm guessing, for at least 6 months. Best guess.
Stay right here.
Lorenzo is an resident also. You get, we're paying for debt whether we use the buildings or the residence tax. So I believe, I have to check correctly on this, but I believe we have specific debt on university costs and U-Haul. So we're responsible for that debt directly. Everything else is in proportion to how many beds we have on campus as a percent of the total, what they call system beds. So when they used to group the debt together, you might have 5 campuses participating to borrow money that either doing something new or to handle different maintenance. They issue a bond for that work, and then we calculate what percent we have of that total cost of the debt. So again, I think I'm pretty bad. If you're really interested, I think suggest coming along with this and including what you're looking for more specific terms. But we're paying for debt for most of our residence hall spaces in Woodland.
Yeah, I will mention one. I'm not sure if
Happy to provide.
any further? Crystal?
Hi, I just had something for Bill. I know that you broke down the dollar amount for like the food, and there was 29 cents that right there, yeah, that goes to every dollar for food. I was just wondering if there's a budgeting reason why there's a more prevalent like difference between unhealthy and healthy options in the DC, and if that's a budgeting issue that we like can't have like healthier options, like especially if they're vegetarian or vegan options or something like that.
I can touch on why food is there, but I would say in terms of choices, I just emailed Adam yesterday and we'll start food committee next week on Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Come and have a conversation about the selection and percentages of what's offered. I think one of the things to understand is, so when you look at this dollar, food is $2.9 million worth of our budget. Almost $3 million of all of the revenue that comes in goes back into the food that comes out on your plate. What it essentially boils down to is the students make the choices. This is your program. And hopefully Adam and Tim will also attest, and I know Loic is coming as well, but this is your program. We make the choices based upon what you want, and when you provide the feedback and you provide the choices, we provide the solution. Just like the chairs. We had the chair down here, nobody liked it, we're back to the drawing board, we got rid of that choice because you didn't like it. So I think when it comes to that regard, there's that piece. I will tell you the difference between the university and dining and also Res Life. Res Life and dining share very similar budget strategies because we're what you would consider almost like a special fund of the university because we're an enterprise, we provide a service. Our people piece is our most expensive part of the budget, and part of that revolves around both collective bargaining agreements and the raises, and also the healthcare and the retirement plans for the university. We spend, Steve, I think it's rounded up, it's about $1.50. So every dollar I spend another 50 cents of that on benefits for employees. So if an employee makes $100,000 a year, I pay another $50,000 on top of that for benefits and healthcare. So unlike the university where the state covers the cost of the benefits and the healthcare, dining and Res Life have to pay their share of that because we're an independent location. So our people costs are very expensive because we are a state-run program and our people have very good benefits and their wages are driven by the collective bargaining agreements for the entire state system.
With the 29 cents, is that going to like, what certain things is that going to?
All food spend. So anything that you can consume, 29 cents of every dollar is something you can eat or drink.
Are there any further? None. Thank you very much.
We don't take increases like, the university will also be reducing our structure and we can to meet our fair share of the budget cap. So we're still working on how that's going to work and what we're going to do. But it's the university will be committed to that. And lastly, I would just add that the board of trustees is also hopefully going to support some of our projected deficits through the use of our cash reserves. And so I would just say it's not all falling on students. The university is going to come through to reduce our costs, and the board will also come through to provide short-term relief in our cash reserves. So I just want to mention that we take it very seriously, and we're working with that to monitor those.
She's good. All right. So thank you again. Some more updates from me. Chloe and I are meeting with President Thompson this Friday. So if you have any questions, comments, ideas, anything to bring to her, please let one of us know. And last week, I know Dan mentioned as a presentation about possibly having refugees or women in domestic violence situations living on campus. There's a lot of talk about this. Obviously, not everyone's involved in that conversation, but I am working to schedule BP Forster to come down. It seems like he's at the lead of this to discuss it. And there will need to be discussions and planning involved for it to work smoothly. But personally, I'm in favor of it. I believe it would be beneficial and both short-term and long-term for the university. But there would definitely needs to be a lot of planning involved. They're planning on having people at the state's bringing people to live on campus. So VP Forster should be coming down in the next few weeks. Rather than that, regarding the email for interviews for positions, hopefully it will go out very soon. Laura shaking her head, yes. And then next week's guest speaker is going to be Associate Dean of Students Shannon Green to update us on substance advisory policy. That will be going to the Board of Trustees after she comes down. And then also we're going to have Raven Burrell to discuss Fresh Check Day. And once again, my office hours are Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 1:30 to 3.
Any questions, comments, or concerns for Aaron? Seeing none, thank you, Aaron. Food Services Committee, Adam Carpenter.
Hey, Senator Squad, I'm gonna keep this brief here because I'm kind of feeling like garbage. But welcome to Food Services, but the fun type of food services where you get to just angrily yell at me about your numerous complaints or positive things about the food at this school. Not one that I just keep talking, which isn't fun. We will be having our first meeting of the semester next Wednesday at 10 a.m. Also, I'm going to be taking over this report for the rest of the semester in the absence of the VP of Student Life, since I already sat on the committee, much like how Napoleon took power in the political vacuum in revolutionary France. Sorry, I needed to use my history concentration somehow. I'm paying all this money for it. So if you have anything good or bad to say about dining, ask me so I can bring it up at our next meeting.
Are there any at all? Say that again.
Yes, I plan on asking about that.
Okay. Any further for Kristen?
With spring and fall sports starting up, I know a lot of athletes have to go to the bistro after the DC closes at 8. So is there any way maybe athletes or just the entire student population can get a meal swipe for the bistro? Because I know a lot of people are asking that.
I will say that we have our helpful program that we started instituting where you can order like ahead from 8 to 9 at the bistro without using dining dollars. You can use a meal swipe specifically. So that's something in the right direction. But I think it's going to stay the way that it is. Okay, you can plan ahead a little bit.
Any further?
It's disappointing.
Thank you, Adam. Vice President for the Finance, Dan Curtis.
All right, your student activity fee going to good use. All right, so we're presenting today on a few different items. All right, so good evening. We'll be talking about the SGA budget and just a few other updates. So just on our agenda today, we'll have a quick debrief of the club fair, changes to the FY23 SGA budget, information regarding the innovation fund request on a commuter lounge space, and just some updates on that. And also give a hoot day, which the foundation is putting on for fundraising efforts here on campus. So club fair by the numbers, and these are just some numbers that were gathered. They do not reflect the actual experience, and I'll explain why. So club participation, we had 40 clubs and other campus offices, such as the Office of Financial Aid, that came to the club fair. So we are very thrilled with that. That's about half of all student clubs and organizations. That usually doesn't happen in the winter. More in the fall, you see a lot more. Winter, you typically see less, since especially with club sports, their teams are solidified. For student attendance and analytics, for presence, 19 students were checked in. There were, of course, more students that did attend the club fair. However, only 19 were checked in. When we look at the analytics for the events, 21% were commuters. There were more women than men overall. Some of the highest majors were in terms of health sciences. That was a big one, and CJ as well. So those are just some brief analytics on that part. For an analysis of club fair, we need to definitely consider timing. We did move it to 11 to 2 in order to try to increase commuter student attendance. Typically, we would have it later in the day from, let's say, 4 to 6.
We want to make sure that commuters are involved in this campus. So we try to push 11 to 2. But of course, as the case with me, I had back-to-back classes during that time. So I was certainly concerned. So what we're going to try to do, and I'm working with Aaron to work on a common hour proposal through AUC. Most of the campuses have a common hour so that campus events can occur, whether that's lectures, different programming, et cetera, that commuters can then go to. We do not have that this time. We only have the common meeting time on Fridays. So having a common hour time for programming would be very beneficial. So for student clubs and club leaders, we do need to do a better job with marketing presence. So emails have been going out, we've been seeing flyers around campus, social media stuff, et cetera. We do, of course, keep doing that, keep with your word of mouth to try to get presence out there. I was just talking to a student before this meeting who said the business club, they didn't know where it was. I say, okay, download this app, you'll find out where it is, and we move on from there. So definitely talk about presence and try to getting students to download it. So the FY23 budget for SGA, as we mentioned last week, we had to, of course, restructure everything from the fund model that we were working on based on some unexpected fringe charges. So the provisional budget revenue that we had was $430,220. Based on the final budget, which was passed in November, we were $10,654 was taken out. So the updated revenue amount was $419,566. What has been already spent or allocated for specific events, so this will also include Owl Ball, which is $7,500, the banquet, which is $5,000, the scholarship, which is $5,000, and the Fine Arts Festival, which is $500. In addition to everything that's already been spent, that's $403,283.56. What you see there is a conservative estimate for remaining funds that we would have in Banner after everything has been allocated to those events. So that is $16,282.44. This is how we would distribute that $16,000. So finance proposal pool, that's going to clubs and organizations that submit a finance proposal request of $10,000. That is a little bit more than what we gave, around $7,500 in the fall. Typically, we get more proposals in the spring, so we're getting an estimate of around $10,000 at this time. Administration and general operations of $2,000. The build the nest fund of $1,000. So for any small projects around campus that we want to fund. We have a contingency or really to be determined distributions of $3,282.44. You can see the distribution percentages on the right. So large percentages going to the finance proposal pool. Around 20% is kept around. We'll hopefully in mid-semester reevaluate. Other allocations to note. So as I mentioned before, this was in the first part of that slide before the 16,000. So 7,500 remains constant for Owl Ball, 5,000 for the SGA banquet, 5,000 for the Senate scholarship, 500 for a Fine Arts Festival. One unanticipated charge. As you remember, when Barb was here, she had a lot of institutional knowledge. So a lot of this stuff just came out of the budget, and most people didn't really know about it. So the athletics announcer support, we typically, and I did not know this until the other day, give $400 to athletics for announcers. So that's something that we typically do. So that's something we have to take out of our budget as well. Other notable charges: university tickets, our ticket application of $71. Donations that the SG provided to these various organizations, so $606.89 for Salvation Army. To be determined for the American Cancer Society, last year was $1,200. Stuff accrues of $239.18, and to be determined based on final bills for catering, prizes, and activities for the club fair that we just held. For the innovation fund request for the commuter lounge, I was reading through, as I typically do, on other documents that the university provides in my free time. So, I went through the School of Criminology, Psychology, Social Justice, and Public Policy Strategic Plan on the NextU website. Dean Aquino submitted this back in August. He mentioned in a strategic plan that he wants to create a commuter space. So in order to prevent us from creating, competing initiatives and thereby wasting money on two different projects, I'm hoping that we can reach out to Dean Aquino in the next few days and some others in academic affairs to make sure that they have some input in this process and that we have that as a seamless project on our end. So it's a to be determined location. We're awaiting VP Soha on how that would all work and where that would be. Initial ideas have been formulated by myself, Aaron, Mia, who's our grad assistant, and Laura. And there's also a survey that's going out to all commuter students within the next few days on what they would like to see, and we'll collect that data. And we are continuing our meetings almost every week here in SGA. Our next meeting for the Innovation Fund with Ria Feuerstein, who is in charge of the Innovation Fund, will be later this month on the 27th, or late next month on the 27th. Give a hoot day, save the date for March 22nd through the 23rd. The theme for this has been determined by the fundraising committee of the foundation, is the class of 1969 versus the class of 2023. So it's a bit of a competition. The goal for the class of 1969, the members of the class that were there, they want to create a $25,000 endowed scholarship. For the class of 2023, it's going to be determined, and more information will be coming. What I did know is not going to be the mural. So the meeting with foundation, I'm meeting with the chair tomorrow to discuss other initiatives. One idea is try to get more students involved in philanthropy. So that could include students being encouraged to give $5 to student emergency fund, potential for a raffle for an item or something. We want to make sure that us as students are giving back in some way to fellow students, and that you continue to give after you graduate. And that's it. So if there's any questions.
Are there any comments, questions, or concerns for Abraham? Seeing none, thank you. Executive Secretary report, Adam Carter.
Wow, 2 reports from me in 1 meeting. It must be someone's birthday or something. Laura, Aaron, and I met today to discuss the spring SGA elections a little bit. More information will come in the near future, but for now, a little teaser is that signature papers will be available on March 27th, which is a Monday. Finally, for the joke of the week. Why did the banana go to the doctor? It wasn't peeling well. But the end.
Are there any comments, questions, or concerns?
Awesome.
Seeing none, thank you. Is there any new business? Seeing none, announcements. Liam?
Can I see everyone, the rules next to the
Any further, next one, though?
The constant point of the five it's my life, 7. Then I get to that. In your
Alan Blair?
Charles Wednesday, Westfield, wear your swag.
Any further? Elizabeth Dexter? Next step?
On behalf of Katie and Dr. Board, thank you for taking the lunch drive. We have to turn up, so keep posted.
Dan Courier?
The account will be hosting a reason being is that we're trying to get students so we can get environment yields this year. So if you like business student, please come for pizza.
Michaela Evans? Roll call.
Michaela Evans. Keith Levins. Levi Ekstrom. Caitlin Egan. Nicholas Smith. Timothy Allen. Isabella Cateo. Haley Kane. Maggie Roberts. Constantino Sestopoulos. Here. Christopher Lanning. Here. Eric Hardy. Here. Ethan Haynes. Here. Lois Black. Alexandria Malian. Daniel Lyons. Lucas Sapau. Scott Jones. Nick Palumbo. Sarah Harrington. Jack Wyndham. Joseph Benia. Angela Hayes. And Justin Wall.
If there's no additional business, I adjourn the meeting until February 7th.
Thank you.